Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, folks. Hello, Juicebox. Hello, Ryder. Hello, Steven. Welcome. Let's not put a top chat. Let's do live chat. Okay. Welcome. Hello, Deadly Spark. I don't like that the chat isn't appearing on the screen. Let's see. Hello, Summer. And still nothing appearing on the screen. Okay, let's remove the chat box. Oh, and it appears the moment that I take it off. Okay. Let's put it back on. Chat box. Move it back over here. Scale it out. Okay. It should be working now. Jeffrey, welcome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Glad to have you, even if it's just for a moment. Hello, Katie. Welcome. Okay, now chat should be populating to the screen. I guess it doesn't really matter that much because we are just doing YouTube today, and that means the chat is available. But I guess I know people watch it full screen sometimes, so putting chat on screen is helpful for folks. So I'm trying to get better about doing that. Hello, Justin. Welcome. Hello, Zach. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. Congratulations on, so 40,000 subscribers several months ago. But we are finally getting around to doing the live stream that I wanted to do for quite some time now. Zach, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Today is just a hangout. I'm just going to answer questions. So, and chat about whatever subjects people want to talk about. So, whatever folks want to do or say or whatever, holla at your boy. Thank you so much. Be there directly. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, somebody gifted somebody a Super Geek Mike membership. That's so... Summer, thank you so much for gifting that membership. That's so kind of you. I really appreciate that. Hello, Gamer Core. Welcome. I went to Strike Wolfie. Thank you so much, Summer, for doing that, and welcome, Strike Wolfie. I hope you enjoy being a member. Yeah, what else? What interesting things can I say while we are waiting for folks to jump in and say hello? Summer, I know. I was like, I don't think Summer is a member, a YouTube member anyway. But very kind of you to gift it to someone else. Let's see. So Thursday we have a episode of Critical Role Demystified coming out. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get the early one up tomorrow. It does not look like I'll have that up by then, but I am hoping to have the early access version up for members and patrons by Wednesday. If not, it'll be up Thursday. It'll just be ad free. All the appointments and things go okay last week. Yep, things went well. Painted the living room. Appointments went well. We had some appointments this morning as well, which is why I had to push the stream back a little bit because it turns out we had like 3 or 4 doctor's appointments all for the same, all for today. So we just lumped them all into the morning just to get them all over with. Yeah, baby's looking good. Baby's looking healthy. Still on track for, we are thinking late April is very likely. Technically, it's for early May. Zach Harrison has a question. How much do we owe to players to run published adventures as written versus customizing them to our own personal taste? So that is a great question. I am of multiple minds on this because I have this weird like completionist mind and this idea of like, oh, it would be really wonderful for my players to be able to have the experience that other people playing the game will have. So if they're talking to somebody about Curse of Strahd, for example, and they are talking to that person and they're like, oh yeah, and the person says, oh, well, what did you do about this character? And they're like, oh, we never even interacted with that character. I don't even know who that is. Or they'll say something and someone else will be like, that's not from the book. What are you talking about? Does it sort of isolate them from that communal experience? And that's something I think about all the time. And I have to remind myself that it is so much more important for them to have fun at the table. That's the only thing that matters. Everything else is a great secondary objective if you think that you can achieve it. But honestly, it is so much more vital that you focus on what your players will enjoy in the campaign. If there's a way to do that and also still have it be faithful to the original game, great, or to the original module as written, great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's also no reason not to change things if you think you have a more interesting experience. Like, for example, I am planning a video about rewriting the end of Lost Mine of Phandelver. Clearly, thousands of people have had no problems playing in or running through Lost Mine of Phandelver as written. I do not like something about the ending. It just rubs me the wrong way. That's not like offensive or anything. I'm just like, I just feel like there's something I just don't think it does anything interesting with. And so it's like, they could either go this way and do something interesting with it, or go some completely different direction and not leave that unfulfilled narrative on the table. So for me, and it just has to do with the fact that the reveal of the final enemy is, I feel kind of lackluster. So that's something I'm going to work on. I don't really have a fix yet. I have an idea for the shape of it, which is, it should really just be a Scooby-Doo reveal at the end. But I don't know what that looks like yet. I need to figure that out. Like, who's under the mask? But I don't know what that looks like yet. But I think that will be more fun. So, there's nothing wrong with people running the adventure completely as written. I don't think that is inherently a virtue. If there's choices that you thought about making that you chose not to, and the only reason why was because it wasn't faithful to the adventure, I just don't think that's a good enough reason not to change things that you think your players will find fun, or that you'll find fun. Your players may not know the difference, but if you think something's going to be more fun one way than the other, absolutely feel free to change it. The 2 times I've run Curse of Strahd, the first time I rigged the Taroka reading so that I knew where everything was going to be. The second time, I didn't rig it, but I did remove the ones that I just didn't think were going to be very fun. And even then, I still had some that was like, there was one that came up, then I was like, that just isn't as exciting as it could have been. And so maybe next time I run it, I won't include that card either. Because I don't think it's going to be fun, or I don't think I'm going to have as much fun running that version. So, I absolutely understand feeling like, wouldn't it be fun to run it as written? And I have to remind myself that is not the priority. That's not why people sat down at the table, with very few exceptions. And if somebody has an exception, if they're like, I want to play through this as written, obviously if you're playtesting something, if you're part of a beta test for a published adventure or a new system or whatever it is, there is absolutely a virtue to playing it as written, because you need to make sure it works or doesn't work. But it is very different when you are just having fun with your friends, and your goal should be to just make the experience as good as it can be. Thanks so much for the question, Zach. I really appreciate it. It scrolled way down. I already answered that. Any interesting indie games I haven't had a chance to talk about on the channel recently? No, the only game, I have more to say about Shadow Dark that I will talk about later in the year. I haven't read anything else yet. I've been playing some Pathfinder as well, which is not, I wouldn't say an indie game, and that I will talk about that this year as well. Nothing else that I've had a chance to read yet this year. Thank you, Stephen, for the question. Hello, Hades. Welcome. Deadly Spark. Yeah, Killbox is a great Critical Role episode, and it's going to be a really fun Demystified episode as well. I'm really excited for it. Summer, am I going to do more session planning live streams I can look forward to in a year? Yeah, probably. I don't know when. I'm trying to. It's tough to balance live streaming with all the other content I need to do, with also the other housework and prep for the baby that I need to do. So I haven't had a chance to. I'm probably not going to live stream every day. Maybe once a day, once a week. Maybe consistently adding to that alongside. Maybe I'd like to stream more than once a week. I'm gonna try to stream Baldur's Gate tomorrow, but it just depends on how fast things are moving at the house. So my goal is to do more session planning streams for my games, but I don't know. I'm not gonna do them every week, and I don't know when I'm gonna do the next one. So yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ryder. I really appreciate the congratulations. Summer, thank you for the congratulations. Zach, yeah. Hopefully my answer rung true, because I imagine I'm not the only one who struggles with that. Zach Biddle agrees that the Lost Mine of Phandelver ending is poor. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's just I feel like it could be stronger. Big Brain 05 asked, why does this stream matter? I hit 40,000 subscribers and I thought that was neat, and I wanted to do a Q&A with some folks and just answer questions and hang out. That's all. I mean, if you're asking why things matter, that's a bigger question. Anthony Mullinex. Talking about Lost Mine. Yep. Gamercore. So also talking about Lost Mine. Polymorphing the green dragon into a mouse, putting it in a jar, and then flying it over lava and dropping it and burn to death. That sounds pretty epic. That's honestly a pretty rad thing to happen in any game. That sounds amazing. Oops, sorry me. Baronosa 40. Warhammer's 40k. I got you. That took me a second. Lol King Catbag, welcome. Zach Harrison, yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I've made a video about Forgotten Realms. I'll probably do another one in the future. I similarly do not love the names in Forgotten Realms, and do not love the like some of the location names and the people names. So I try to change those. Big Brain 5, yeah, this is a Q&A. Kuetlachli just started playing Pathfinder finally and loving it. I'm glad to hear that. That's fantastic. Summer, I don't think we will be talking Curse of Strahd spoilers. I'm trying to get better about not spoiling things in a live stream, because I know, other people as well are also playing through Curse of Strahd or want to play in Curse of Strahd at some point. So I'll make sure that I warn people. I'll find some way to indicate that there's a Curse of Strahd spoiler before doing it. Mazik, thank you so much. That is super kind of you. Thank you. AJ knows, would you ever consider doing a demystified series on another actual play? Absolutely. I have other ones that I want to talk about as well. Right now, I kind of only have the bandwidth for Critical Role, because I would not want other demystified series to interrupt the flow of Critical Role Demystified, because I know there are a lot of people who just come for those. So I want to regularly keep those going. But also, I wouldn't want another demystified series to interrupt the flow of main series videos as well, because I like talking about other things. And sponsors don't always love to be involved with demystified style things, because there are fan content policies about, like, can these videos be sponsored if I'm using clips from the actual play show, which is tricky. So I want to keep other series going as well. So my goal, and I already know which one I'm probably going to do first, but my goal is to take a smaller, shorter chunk of actual play, either episodes or season or what have you, and have those episodes all ready and done, and then release them in a burst of, once a week. You just get a third video every week, or a second video every week, if I'm not doing weekly videos that time. So that would be my goal, and it's something that I want to do, and something ideally I would like to do this year or early next year. That'd be great. Yeah, so people are listing off potential other series. It would have to be something shorter or self-contained. Like, pardon me, it wouldn't be, Drakenheim. It might be an arc of Drakenheim. It would be Fantasy High. It would be, for example, if I was doing Adventure Zone, I wouldn't do all of Balance. It would be like the first arc, something like that. So that's what I'm thinking for format. I don't have sorry. I don't have a strong sense yet of timing, just because I'm trying to be better about budgeting my time this year. So, we'll see. But that is the goal. Okay, I gotta scroll back up. Seb Lidbetter asked, just found from Critical Role Sublink a link to the podcasts for the first campaign. Nice. Yeah, I personally have a hard time consuming Critical Role through the podcasts, but if that's how you're having the most fun with it, then more power to you. I wish I liked the podcast format better for that campaign specifically. I think all of my issues with it are solved by campaign 2. But Lol King Catbag, what is my favorite part of playing in person? It is probably creating handouts, and at least that is what I would answer now that I've done the video about handouts. I have other videos coming later this year about talking about other aspects of going back to playing in person. So maybe my answer will change after I do those. But that is my answer right now. Oh, Ryder, that is extremely kind of you. I think it is unlikely that we'll hit 6 double digits this quickly, but very kind of you. Pippa, thank you so much. Lots of people having kind words. Question: one game you're DMing, you're having a lot of players join midway through, from 3 to 6. So wondering how your thoughts on joining at higher level and how to tie them into the plot. Generally speaking, it is helpful to find connections to other player characters, or if you can have everyone be involved in a faction. Like, I mean, that's kind of something we're dealing with right now in our Shadow Dark game, which is as characters have to keep joining the adventure, it's really helpful to say, oh, you are all part of the same faction, so that way we can just hand wave it. We just say, oh yeah, you found out about this because we're all part of the same organization, bounty hunter organization, or whatever it is. Just because it speeds it up so much faster. Because I have joined other games and had to play a lot of catch up, and it's really tough. And I think at the very least, it gets a little easier if you can say, okay, your characters would know each other, so it's easier for you to justify why your character's hanging out together. It doesn't solve every issue, but I find that does help. Hades Black, you have a question. How would you improve challenge rating? You've been using Bob World Builder's method of the max damage done by the monster overpass the total HP of one PC that's too dangerous. I don't really have an answer quite unfortunately. But I would recommend Sly Flourish. Mike Shea has a YouTube channel and a blog called Sly Flourish. He thinks a lot more about challenge rating than I do. And so he definitely, I mean, he put out a book about improvising monsters. He basically designed the challenge rating system for Flea Mortals for the MCDM book, or at least helped guide it a lot because this is very important to him. So he would definitely have more insight than I do. And his feeling generally is that monsters for 5e deal too little damage when they're higher level. So I don't know if you'll agree with his assessments, but at the very least, he has better considered points than I do when it comes to that topic. Gamercore, I'm really sorry to hear that. Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. That is a horrible reason to have to go into hiatus. It makes sense, unfortunately, but yeah, at unequal levels, I understand where you're coming from, Gamercore. It's really difficult in 5e. I think there's other games where you could make the argument. Like, I'd be curious to see how it plays in Shadow Dark. I'm not going to do that right now for the game I'm currently running. If I was playing for my friends, I would give it a try. If like a different campaign, I would try it. But no, let me rephrase. If I was doing a West Marches, that's what I mean. But sorry, if I was playing for a lot more people, if it was a West Marches, I would be more open to, like, if you're creating a new character, you're coming in at level 1. But if you're just a contained group of people, that's a harder sell. Anthony, it's the first time I've heard the baby referred to as a halfling. Thank you so much. That is so kind of you. Thank you. Summer, have I considered another channel for my adventures as a new progressive slime nerd dad? I have a downtime channel, like just ideally for vlogs. I don't update it that often just because it's not generally where I put my energy into. I don't know how much content I'll be making that features the kid because I don't necessarily want to make that choice for the kid. Of like, I have, as we're celebrating here, I have a platform of, 40,000 people, 42,000 people who are interested in the things I say. I don't know if my kid wants to be in front of all those people. Like, they can't make that choice right now. Maybe we'll, on smaller social media platforms, like I've got like 100 Instagram followers. So I feel more comfortable having something up there when there's a lot less interest, and less like availability. Although even then I'll probably leave it to my wife to post images and see what she's comfortable with. But that being said, I will probably end up vlogging things that are happening, days in the life. But it's just probably not gonna be my first priority. So maybe if I have an idea for a video, or if people ask specific questions, because I have had people say like, have you thought about doing content as a new dad? And I'm like, that's just too broad a topic. I don't have a game plan for what that would look like. But if I come up with something more specific, yeah, maybe. Oxventure is another one that I have had. Let me see. I think it's in my recommended, or not my recommended, my saved. I think I've saved that one before. Oxventure is one that comes up a lot, that I know nothing about, that I know people are interested in. No, I have not saved this one. I'll go ahead and save that. Thank you for the reminder. I needed to do that. Since the GM was only the GM was experienced with the TTRPGs, it's a showcase of how to introduce D&D to new players. Yeah, that makes it a good selling point. I think that is. There's a lot of actual play shows that are like that, and I think that it's always a good hook because it, I think, takes the burden off of the players. Ideally, we'll see. I have another video about that coming up at some point. Do you prepare a campaign pitch / primary player primary document when you kick off a new campaign? If so, what do you include? Yeah, I do. It depends on the circumstance. So sometimes I will just say, here's the pitch, here's what we're playing. And sometimes I will say, I have a couple of ideas. And actually, like, I run games on Start Playing, startplaying.games. And so what I will do is I will put up there and I'll say, I'll break down, this is what the adventure is about. This is, so for example, actually, let me find one of mine and just read it to you, because then you'll get a chance to see what I might put in it. So let's see. Let's use my Shadow Dark one, where I wrote something. We're gonna actually just view adventure. There it is, top right corner. If it was a snake, it would have bit me. So I'll say things like, this will be a 2-month campaign. So that's how long I expect it to run. I think that's really important because I think it is valuable to tell people either, hey, we are going to play for 5 weeks. Hey, we're going to play for 2 years. You know, that's important stuff people need to know. It's tough to ask people, hey, do you want to commit to doing an activity with me every Sunday forever? And then I said, this will be a fully player-directed open-world campaign. You'll receive clues and plot hooks to various adventures, but you can always just wander into uncharted territory and face whatever unexpected horrors lie in the wilderness. You may even find yourself in the middle of some of the more famous D&D adventures from across history. And then, thankfully, this also gives me categories I can fill in. Things like, what do I provide, which is the PDF of the rules, a virtual tabletop, Discord server. What do people need to bring, which is they need some way to be on the microphone. They need some way of having headphones in while we're playing so we don't get echoes. I give them my safety tools, and it's all broken down that way in a really nice way. But yeah, I just try to boil down as much information as I can into a paragraph, because I think it is the easiest way to hook people, because people's eyes skim over when you give them too much information. If you give them a paragraph and they come back and they say, oh, well, how would this work? Then you can start giving them more information. That's my approach in general. Fall of Ashes. Do I have tips for high-level D&D games? You're running a high-level campaign for the first time. You could use the advice. I mean, I technically have lots of advice because Critical Role, the episodes I'm talking about are very high level. But a broad way of thinking is, be prepared for the fact that they are going to bust out spells that will completely avoid an adventure or solve an adventure in one step. So with that in mind, be prepared to jump on the fly. You know, I'm thinking back to an example of a game that my friends and I ran, and this was for an actual play show, so it was like being recorded, and we just like turned into mist and flew out the window and left the adventure location. And my GM was like, oh no, that was where all the stuff was, and had to figure out something. I don't envy him for having to figure that out, but he didn't know that was a possibility. For me, thankfully, I watch a lot of Critical Role, so I know what happens at higher levels. I know how crazy D&D gets at higher levels, which is helpful as well to look into, like see what your players can actually do when they get up there in levels. But also just try to think about ways that your adventure can't be solved by one spell, unless it's the wish spell. But, you know, if there's a big bad guy, okay, what if they polymorph the bad guy, as someone talked about earlier? They polymorph the bad guy into a bunny, they put him in a jar, they drop him into some lava. That's going to be the end of your bad guy. So what other threats can there be? Does he have minions? Is there some sort of environmental force or natural disaster? Like, what else is going on that stopping the bad guy doesn't necessarily resolve? Because I think it's very tempting to have the, oh, well, you killed the bad guy, so even if it's not the Avengers or Star Wars Episode 1, all the bad guys just shut down when you kill the main bad guy, you still have, like, Return of the Jedi, where it's like, oh, well, we killed one dude, so now we can the war is over. It's like, yeah, I mean, that sometimes happens, but that's actually pretty rare that that's how it works out. So there can be other ways for the challenge to continue, as long as it's still dramatic, which is the trade-off. Like, sometimes it is kind of fun for high-level characters to just solve things with a spell, because that's why they played a spellcaster. But when only the spellcasters can solve the problem with a spell, that does leave other players out to dry. It means whichever one player managed to do it is the hero, and everyone else is just their sidekicks. So try to think about adventures that have a lot of other things going on that can't all be resolved, unless it is like something like Curse of Strahd. You deal with this one bad guy. That is the stated goal of the campaign. And then just do whatever you can to make that character as beefy as they can be, which is something that I'm working on for Curse of Strahd, because one of my player groups is about to go face him, for their final fight, and the stat block is not strong enough, so I'm using other versions. Thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Do I ever deal with mid-campaign funk? Sure, yeah, Lol King, I definitely do. I haven't in a while, but I've definitely had that happen before. None of my current games, I don't think, have ever had that issue, but I've definitely had it before. Especially, I find, this is interesting, I've especially had this problem when I was running my own campaigns. When I'm running prepped, like pre-written games, I don't have that problem as much. I don't know if everyone will feel that way. In fact, I don't even know if that is true when I ran Prince of the Apocalypse, but it's not really a problem I've had during Curse of Strahd. And even with Prince of the Apocalypse, I don't think that was the problem. I don't think I was feeling the same, like, funk. I would think I was feeling like the campaign was just sort of stalling out. And that was less my feeling about feeling unfulfilled by it, as much as, like, me feeling like, oh, I am seeing that this campaign is not registering with the players. So that was definitely something I deal with more when I'm writing the adventure myself. Hey, why am I not able to scroll? That's weird. Oh, Anthony, thank you so much. That's so kind. I'm very glad that our videos were able to help your friend. I'm very glad that I was included in that recommendation. Yes, Super Geek Wife is in the chat. Yes, she is. Question, is there a game system I would recommend for beginners to understand the basics of how TTRPGs work? You're only just now realizing that D&D is not the only TTRPG and that it has multiple editions. Yeah, I mean, I want to be very careful when answering this question, because this elicits a lot of different responses from different people. There is an argument that TTRPGs all spun out of D&D, so D&D is a nice, helpful Rosetta Stone. I don't think that's as true for the modern version of D&D, where D&D 5th edition is on the crunchier side of most editions. So I think Dungeon World is one that I could recommend, or any Powered by the Apocalypse game. Or, what's a really good help, actually, depending on the game system, but if you can say, like, oh, did you like, for example, Avatar The Last Airbender? Let's play the Avatar The Last Airbender RPG. Did you like I haven't checked out the Doctor Who RPG, but, like, if you can get them in through something else, that's not a bad way to start introducing them to the concepts while also having them be able to plant their feet on a solid surface of being able to understand what exactly is expected from them, while also knowing how the world works, how characters in the world works. Like, I don't know if there is a good, Game of Thrones RPG, but if there was, people would understand how that game is supposed to function, basically. Now, thankfully for a lot of folks, D&D can be that right now because you have Baldur's Gate, you have the movie, you have even things like Legend of Vox Machina, the cartoon. So it's kind of an easier sell in that category than it used to be. Sort of easier for people to imagine. And there are some people who don't want to be part of a existing world. They want the sort of freedom to play who they want. It also depends on the edition. Like, I don't think I would really recommend the Star Wars Fantasy Flight RPG for this process because it is so much crunchier than 5e. But that's sort of my knee-jerk is try to find some other way to hook them in. But Steven brings up a good point. I know I'm jumping ahead in chat a little bit. Steven brings up a good point that Powered by the Apocalypse games tend to be incredibly specific in terms of genre. But if you like something that... If they like something that is covered by a Powered by the Apocalypse game, it's great for it. Like, I just got a copy of... You'll see me talk about this. I filmed a video about this already. I got a copy of Masks, which I will reference in an upcoming video, and I'll definitely make a future video of it. But it's about teenage superheroes. And, like, if your players like things like Teen Titans and Young Justice, they're going to love it. So, okay. Hopefully that helps. Lol King, I've actually made a video about Forged in Shadows. I made a video about it about a year ago, I think. Maybe a little less. I see people are talking about Theros. I'm definitely going to talk about Theros in an upcoming video. I don't know if I'll get a chance to do it this year, but I would love to. I really want to talk about that setting. Hades Black, thank you so much. So kind. Jeffrey, thank you so much. Good to see you. Hello. I skipped a question, didn't I? Who's my favorite Discord mod? I mean, favorite D&D villain. I obviously will not pick a Discord mod, because that would be super mean. But I will say that the Discord mods have been amazing, and I every once in a while I will just be blown away by how thoughtful they are and how much work they put into this. And I know that I'm just seeing a fraction of it. So thank your Discord mods because they are amazing. And I think we're actually currently recruiting more Discord mods. I think that's still going. I don't remember when that closes, but we're, bringing more people on, which is really wonderful. Favorite D&D villain? Man, I mean, I know it's the influence of Critical Role, but like Vecna just works for me on so many levels, and I'm very curious about the upcoming module about him. It kind of makes me wish that I'd been running some of these published adventures this whole time, because it's going to be like this sort of Avengers Endgame style finale for the past 10 years of D&D adventures, and part of me is like, oh, if I'd known that was coming, I would have put a lot more energy into running some of these pre-written campaigns. And I still want to run a bunch of them. I just haven't had the chance to run some of these. Or the times that I have been frustrated because I need to make some changes to them, because as we were talking about earlier in the stream, they're not all perfectly written. But yeah, I like Vecna. But there's other ones that are good too. I made a whole video about them, but I think Strahd as well. I really like Strahd as well, because he's just such a horrible human being in some very realistic ways, and I enjoy leaning into that in my games. I know that is not for everybody. Some people like him playing him more goofy. Some people like gender flipping him to a female character, so it's less sort of charged, which is totally valid, and I'm sure more fun and more escapist, or more like sinister girl boss energy, which seems like a strange vibe, but I think people would probably love that. For me, I enjoy being able to say, hey, here is like the worst human being, and he was not a human being anymore, but like there are people like this now, please go find magic weapons and beat the hell out of him. Oh, I was just about to say we're at 69 viewers and we're up to 75. Oh well, I guess more viewers. Okay, answered that question already. Let's see, where was I? Talked about that. I think I said thank you for that comment already. Thank you, Hades. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, contingency is a great spell. I've had it as a wizard before. It's awesome. It means losing 2 spell slots early in the day, but you know what? It's worth it. Whip-O-Matic, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Oh, I'm so glad the body positivity videos meant something to you. The second video I posted about body positivity, there was a lot of negativity. A lot of people, because I think the audience had just grown since the first one. It had been about a year and a half since the first body positivity video. There was a lot more people who were there just for D&D and were like, I don't know what this is. I don't like it. And like I lost subscribers. That's the only video that I've lost more subscribers than I've gained. Not for any of the politics videos, not for like only for the second body positivity video. But it's so much more interesting and meaningful to me that so many people reached out and said that video meant something to them. So I'm very, very grateful for that feedback and reaction. So. Fall of Ashes, thank you so much. I'm not sure if you are still in the chat. I know you were saying it was late there. It sounds like you were departing, but if you're still here, thank you for being here. If you've left, thank you for being here. It's true either way. Mogo Prime, how do you feel about, as a GM, trying to dissuade your players from turning into mist and flying away from the adventure? Is it more noble to pivot and improv, or can you say, guys, please don't? It is possible to say, guys, please don't, without actually saying that out loud. It's very, very difficult. And I find that actually it is something that I do too much. And I think this is something I'm going to talk about in an upcoming Demystified. I was either filmed it or I'm writing the script for it. I think it is it in episode 53? I don't remember. I know I have talked about this in a recent Demystified that you have not seen yet. Not to say that I have an answer necessarily for how to do it. I think it is generally ideal to give the players the opportunity to do that. It might mean being able to say, okay, if you're going to go this direction, I didn't have that right in front of me. I still think you should be able to do that. It just, I need like 5 minutes to make sure to go prep it. But like, sometimes that's really fun. Like, I think some of my 2 or 3 favorite moments of running this game have been when players went to places I super did not expect them to go and didn't have anything ready and had to figure something out. The first time the players were like writing messages to the bad guy and they're like gonna go meet him, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? And I was like, okay, well, let's take a quick break, everyone get some food, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. And as I'm in the bathroom, I'm thinking through like scenes from movies and TV shows of like, what villain can I steal, because I need to introduce a second in command. They need to be able to talk to someone but not be face to face with the villain, because that's going to ruin the twist. Who can they be talking to? Okay, what was a good scene? And I just, for some reason, was thinking of like 2 scenes from TV shows where the bad guy's like eating food while talking to the heroes, and it helped them feel really casual. And I was like, okay, I have an idea for the character. And then, but as he was talking, I was just like making things up, and they'd be like, well, if you're a death cult, then like, why don't you just die? And he was like, I have, and I'm back. And I was like, I guess that's true about this cult now. I guess that's a thing they do. So, but it was fun and exciting. The other 2 times that I can think of were in Princes of the Apocalypse. It happened a bunch of times in that game because they did not care about the main quest, or they thought the main quest was in other places because the way that adventure is laid out is not as strong as it could be. But I went to these other places, and one of them I just was inventing a whole city, like session by session, and like came up with a really cool like piece of architecture with a cool name and like some interesting like politics between the city and the different cults, and it worked really well. The other time was when the characters, there's a moment in Prince of the Apocalypse, very minor spoilers, where the players can rescue a genie, and he'll take them back to the elemental plane of air, and then he'll say, okay, thank you for saving me. Here's a quick reward. I'm going to send you back to your home plane now. And one of the players was like, oh, well, actually, I'm an air genasi. Can we go see my family who lives here in the plane of air? And I was like, of course we can. That is an obvious thing that any amazing and even decent GM would have expected you to ask to do. So, of course we can do that, and let's go do that right now. So just make up another city where they went to this Air Genasi's homeland. And I was like trying to come up with like, okay, what would the architecture be like? So I just described it as like a Dr. Seuss town. There's like, if people can kind of levitate and fly, then of course the staircases would be very like How the Grinch Stole Christmas style, which I thought that was a nice detail. And then we had to like have like this emotional scene where she's going and like saying goodbye to her parents, because she's like, okay, we need to like deal with these elemental threats, which means we might be shutting off the planes from our homeland, which again, I'm having to come up with like other plot stuff to like justify this trip. But then like they were like emotionally like, okay, well, I think I'm saying goodbye to my parents because we may not see them again. And I was like, cool. I did not know this was going to happen like an hour ago. So it is important for me. My perspective is it is very important for the players to be able to do that, because that's what makes this game as powerful and amazing as it is. It just means that you have to be ready to roll with the punches. And sometimes it does mean saying, okay, let's just hang out for like 30 minutes. Let me find a map online. Or like, let me go find my notes. If you can just say find my notes. Or say, okay, I didn't have this prepared because I didn't think you'd be going here yet, but we can have this ready by next week. Let's make sure we, you make the most of the rest of the session. Is there any downtime you want to do before that or something like that? So that's my answer to that question. Hopefully that helped. Oh yes, Summer mentioned Kids on Bikes. I have not played. I can see this is where in a video I would just take that sentence again. I have not played Kids on Bikes, so I don't know. I don't know the system well, but I have heard only good things. So that would be a good one as well. Gamercore, how do you deal with players not taking interest in the lore of your homebrew worlds? In a recent session, they got super into a political situation and realized they don't even know what nation owns the city they're in. I sort of just take it as kind of a given that that's probably how it's going to work. And when it doesn't happen that way, when they start to get interested in it, I am pleasantly surprised. And I know that is not the most useful advice. I think there's other ways to do it. Like you start by slowly building it in. So for example, in my first campaign as a player, my first exposure to D&D, the GM just like drew a crude map. Like it was literally like 3 circles. Like this circle up here is this empire. This circle here is this nation. This circle down here is this nation. And so like it was the most crude map in the world. There was no like sense of scale or scope or locations on it or anything. And that was fine. It did the job. And then we just were working for, like, there was someone who worked for like the mayor and like out of the local mayor's office and was like, oh, here's some quests. And through that, we started getting involved in other politics. We would go and visit other towns and meet other mayors. And so like there's a gradual scaling that can work where you're like slowly getting involved. But that's only if your quest givers are government functionaries, or there's a lot of involving government functionaries like trying to avoid them or trying not to get involved with or looking into corruption in them or things like that. It's actually something we're going to talk a lot about in campaign 2 when we get to campaign 2 of Critical Role Demystified, because there is a lot of politics there and a lot of like what is whose jurisdiction matters a lot. And I think the way Matt generally rolls that out is pretty effective. But generally I just kind of shrug and say, I'm going to include as much as makes sense. If my players don't understand it, that is what I should be expect. Like that's what I should expect, because that's not really what they're there for most of the time. So hopefully that helps. All right, back to the video or back to the comments. Yeah, so so a couple of people, Spartan Huskies, Knit Podcast, and Steven talking about how they don't really like to play the officially licensed RPGs, which is totally valid. I have not played a bunch of them myself. I think the only one that I have a lot of experience in is the Star Wars one, which, again, I don't think it's a bad system. I just think it is a very crunchy system and not really one that I'd associate with what I think of as the Star Wars movies. So it's a double-edged sword for sure. Hello, Emma. Have I had any other photo shoots since the one covered in the last one? No, not any official. I have not had a chance to do another boudoir photo shoot since October 2022. Clara, just passing by to say congrats on reaching the 40K goals. Tiberius video made me start want to binge the first campaign after you were up to date. Oh, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. T-Rock asks, did I watch the Oscars? No, I don't watch the Oscars because I think the more interesting question is who gets nominated than who wins. Because the nomination, and I don't do this, but in theory is like, oh, what a cool list of movies I should check out. And I try to like at least know what's going on with those movies, even if I'm not very good about going to watch them. But also, I do not like watching A-list actors do middle school skits because they are always so painful. I just absolutely, I'm trying not to curse. I hate watching like the most respected, most well-paid actors of our time just like phone it in for like the worst SNL 30-second long bits. It's the pits. Just get comedians or just get actors to come on there and say, "Oh, here's something nice and lovely." Like that's fine. Stop trying to make the Oscars watchable and you will make it watchable. But so that's why I don't watch it. And I've not watched it in like 5 or 6 years. Probably longer, actually. What's my favorite? Katie said the second body positivity video is why you subscribe. Connecting. Okay. I don't know how long I was offline. Hopefully not for very long. But hopefully I'm back. My feeling on that is not that many people left. I mean, it was December. Not that many people. It wasn't like a huge video. Like not like I didn't like lose tens and millions of subscribers or anything like that. Just like, a couple dozen people bailed off. And my feeling was like, okay, if you are not willing to hang out and like ignore a video that is not about something you care about on Christmas Day when you could be doing other things with your time, then like, okay, fine, unsubscribe. I don't really mind. Like I said before, those videos are for me. I hope that they mean other people. I hope they mean a lot to other people. I make them for myself. And so if somebody clicks off of them, all right, whatever. That says more about them than it does about me. Spartan Huskies asks, what is my favorite D&D levels? Yours were 5 to 9. You missed the small level community stuff versus apocalypses. Yeah, I mean, I think I find things to like in all of them. I think it is inarguable that lower level stuff just moves faster at the table. But I will also say that I really like level 5 to 9 as well, or like level 6 to 10 is how I think of it, because there's a lot of flexibility. You can still do small scale adventures, or you can do political stuff or wars or invasions or things like that. And there's a lot of wiggle room there because once you get to like level 11, you feel like you are too high level to deal with bandits in the forest. You feel like you are too low level for, the goblins in the temple, anything like that. But when you're too low level, it feels like it's too early for conquering invaders and things like that. So that's kind of why I really like 6 to 10. I like making content for 6 to 10. Daniel, you cannot imagine what it's like to speak something into canon in real time like that when you DM. It is exciting and nerve-wracking, and you just kind of have to commit to it. Clara, thank you so much. Very kind of you. Anthony, weird question. Would you say that seeing a mind flayer larva and having it try to take a player is worthy of the other players saying burn the ship? Or is that metagaming because of mind flayers? No one is directly familiar with mind flayers. In-world mind flayers are almost mythical. Yeah, it is tough because basically what you're wondering about is were your players metagaming? That's kind of what it sounds like you're asking. Is were your players metagaming and should I have punished them for it? And like the biggest video game of the year had mind flayers in it. So like if they were metagaming, it is kind of not their fault. Like it's tough because like if I put Slotty into an adventure and they start behaving like they are dealing with a xenomorph, that's kind of what I should expect from them because they function the very same way. They function very similarly. There is a very similar reproductive pattern. So if they see anything that reminds them of it, they're kind of playing along with what the game expects them to do. There are some times where you can't ignore in-world knowledge. I mean, this is something that is kind of relevant when you're doing something with like the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, Domains of Dread, is that a lot of them are heavily inspired by pieces of pop culture. There's a Frankenstein's one. There's a Mummies one. Things like that. So if your players meet a Dr. Mordenkainen or whatever the character's name, not Mordenkainen, but whatever the character's name is in Van Richten's guide, who's the Frankenstein analog, it's not unreasonable for them to wonder, hey, is there a monster running around somewhere? Like, that's metagaming. But it's also kind of what the game expects them to do. And so the question kind of becomes, how do you want Mind Flayers to operate in your campaign? Do you want people to think about them as like the boogeymen, or do you want them to be completely unknown and alien? And if that's the case, Baldur's Gate might have kind of blown your shot at doing that, unfortunately. Now that it still doesn't necessarily mean you have to like how they responded to it. You may still feel like they're making a lot of assumptions. You may feel like, okay, it's not reasonable for your characters to know what you know about Mind Flayer larva. I tend not to go that route. I tend to say, especially if it's from outside of the game rules, if it's from like pop culture or something, it tends to be easier to say, you know what your characters know. Bye, Lol King. Hope you had a good time here. Like, as an example, I run a Curse of Strahd game, and I tell my players, your characters know what you know about vampires and werewolves and whatever from pop culture. You don't know what you would know from the rules of the game. Like, if you know, like, oh, well, mechanically, they're immune to everything non-magical, non-silvered, I'm going to start calling you on metagaming. But if you know that werewolves transmit bites and infections, and you think maybe they are vulnerable to only silver, and you know, like, that's maybe werewolf is a bad example because of the silver analogy, but because that is such a big part of pop culture. But I start watching that for metagaming, but I tend to say, like, you know what you could know from pop culture, and that's where the line is. But I also run for a lot of DMs. One of my home games, which I have not played since the test said pregnant on them, which I'm very bad at. I don't know if I'll get a chance to play with them again before we have the baby, which is unfortunate. But I know for a fact that they're all GMs. So I am much more, when I design adventures, I'm much more conscious of the fact that reveals can incorporate the fact that they have knowledge. So, for example, they were in this town, and I was basically just doing Jaws. It was Jaws, except it was Sahuagin instead of sharks. But at one point, they like cast detect magic, and they realize that two of the girls who've been like following them around are like actually withered women who are in illusionary disguise. And I described, like, one of them is like has green skin, and the other one has like blue skin. I think I said maybe they were both green. And immediately my player's like, oh my god, they're sea hags. And that's fine. That still worked for the reveal. It wasn't a twist that they cut through with metagaming. It was like, I knew for a fact that they would probably know what it was, And so there are some times where that, like, there's a reason that it's hard to run for that group sometimes. There's some adventures that there are some adventures that I would not run for that group because they don't function that way. Because they kind of have to trust the players to not have that sort of knowledge or not act on that sort of knowledge. And that's kind of not possible with a group of 3 other DMs. So I just make other choices when I'm running the game. So it's tough because there isn't a right answer. I can understand where you're coming from. I have felt that way before. I'm at the point now with my GMing where that can sometimes bother me and sometimes it doesn't. So it depends on my expectations for the group more so than whether they've crossed a line. Maybe that's the cleanest way to say it, is it's about calibrating my expectations to meet them where they are. Because I love running for new players and introducing them to the hobby. And there are some things that I would have loved to be the one to introduce them to, but Baldur's Gate got to it first. So when I run the game for them, that might change their reception to things. And that's something I just have to live with. Because it's kind of not their fault that they played a game that people thought was popular, unfortunately. As much as it would be fun to blame our players for liking things. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Yes, Arcanus, thank you so much. I've run like 5 sessions of Shadow Dark. So I'm running a game for about 2 months. I'm running it through like startplaying.games, and I'm running it for people who know that they're signing up for a 2-month long game. We're about a month through it now. And the reason I chose 2 months is because it was a perfect amount of time to actually get a sense of whether people like the game, including me. Because I like a lot of stuff about the game. It's a very different style, and it takes time to get used to that. A one-shot doesn't really do it justice. But also, I don't necessarily want people to sign up for a year long of campaigns, setting aside the fact that I deliberately said I will be done by this campaign on my birthday in April because I will not have the bandwidth to keep playing as we get closer to the due date. So for 2 months is a really good chunk of time to say we're going to play every week and we're going to get a feel for this game. And I said I don't know what's going to, you might hit level 10 and you might like completely burn through the game. I think that's unlikely in 8 sessions to hit 10 levels, but it's possible, I'm sure. Or you might only get to level 3. I have no idea. Right now they're all still level 1 and we've been playing for, a while because we're only playing for like 2.5 hours. So it's not like super long sessions, but also it's a different style. And that first dungeon was a lot of them recontextualizing and reassessing their process. So I like the game. There's a lot of things I like about the game. Definitely more videos that I'm going to make about it. But I still think that I am fairly new to it, and I really recommend, and this will be a video, asking people to play just for 2 months is a great chunk of time to really get a sense for a game. A month might be good, but 2 months may be stronger. But again, we'll see. There may be people who are like, okay, I knew whether I liked this after a month. I don't need to play for another month. That's fine. Let's see. Unshelled, you don't have to be in a Dragon Ball Z mood. I know that I never followed Dragon Ball Z, but I happened to be on Twitter a couple days ago and I saw the news, so I know people are on that subject for sure. No apology needed for being in any kind of mood. Tyrox, will I be looking at the Daggerheart open beta? I hope so. I would like to take a look at it. It's tough because I have such a hard time. I think looking at the playtesting materials for 1D&D kind of burned me out on looking at playtest materials. So I don't know if I'm going to really take a look at Daggerheart, but I know that people are curious. I don't really know if I have any time to really right now, so I'm not like committing to it. I'd be curious. I don't know if I will. We'll see. I'm interested, but we'll see. I don't want to start something that I don't have the time to do, and trying to run a Daggerheart game might be in that category. Matthew Moran, I talk a lot about Curse of Strahd and Prince of the Apocalypse. Do I run homebrew campaigns or just modules? Right now, I just run. Well, no, that's not true. Shadow Dark, I'm running a combination of homebrew and pre-written stuff. No, I run. I used to run only homebrew, and it took me a while to start actually running pre-written stuff. And the benefits of pre-written stuff is it sort of burns me out. The running homebrew stuff burns me out faster than running pre-written stuff. There are different challenges. It helped a lot once I'd actually played through Strahd once, so I knew how to do it really well, because I think my GM did an amazing job, but did things also differently than I would. But it was really fun for me to like have that experience as a player and go, oh, I know now how to do this as a GM, which is not something I've had. That's the only pre-written game I've played through as well. But there's other ones that I really want to run because there's things in them that I like or that I think will be cool. I haven't read all the way through them, but there's things in there that I want to try. So I'm probably going to be doing a lot more running modules for at least the next couple of years, because it's just so much easier. But every once in a while, I mean, I have got some homebrew stuff brewing in the back of my head that I would like to get to at some point. Hades brings up an excellent point. I do that sometimes too. I will tell players, hey, I will give you, if someone doesn't metagame, which I don't know that I always encourage them not to, but I will say, oh, you know what? Because you didn't metagame, I'm going to give you a point of inspiration. And that can help steer people towards that behavior. I also give people, if someone says out loud, like, ooh, I know I should do this, but my character would do this, I give them inspiration immediately because they're thinking about why their character would do something that's not strategically smart. And that should be encouraged or at least rewarded. Have I shared my idea where a higher level flash forward years later and have the BBRG, the Big Bad Evil Guy, be a party of members who desire to prove the PCs as monsters? That sounds cool. That sounds really cool. Unshelled Pity. My understanding is that most of the modules are meant to tie into Vecna Eve of Ruin. at least in some way. I don't know how, I don't know which ones. I'm definitely going to be curious about that. But I kind of want to check out that book and like build a little plan to like run some more of those modules. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the time to run them right now. But it definitely, like, hearing that announcement is like, oh, I wish I'd had a chance to run some more of these modules over the past 10 years so I could just bust this out and tell people to like, oh, hey, I played Curse of Strahd with you, bring your Strahd character. I played Tyranid Dragons with you, bring your Dragons character. You know, things like that. I also think that it is, you know, unfortunate that they only just got around to making a sequel for Phandelver, for Lost Mind of Phandelver. So I think that they didn't necessarily invite this path early on to make it clear that this is something you should do, and I think that's a different subject, which I'll probably talk about another time. Cameron Thundy asks, who is my favorite Critical Role PC character and also least favorite? Who's my favorite character? I mean, Jester's the best one, but I don't think I would say that she's my favorite. I mean, I do actually like to say, from Campaign 2, I think Ford is my favorite Campaign 2 character, or Caduceus. I love Ford's frustrated dad energy, which we don't see as much of later in the campaign, but especially early on. Caduceus is a fantastic character. Jester's amazing, though. But also, part of me is just like, the Campaign 1 characters are such strong archetypes. Like, I've said this, you know, in relation to the cartoon. There were all these things that I was worried about. Like, I was worried Vax would be too emo in the cartoon. Vex would be too much of a bitch. Grog would be too stupid and not charming or like endearing enough. Pike would just be, how would they get that character right? Keyleth could so easily be unfun to watch. Scanlan could be like really gross to watch. They solved most of those problems really well, and they solved all of them in some form or another. Percy was the only character I was not worried about at all, because I was like, oh, he's already designed for a cartoon. He's perfect. So Percy is really high on my list of characters. Least favorite, with the caveat that I don't really dislike any of the PCs. Probably Mollymauk, which I know is tough because like some people love Mollymauk. For me, I just feel Mollymauk to me feels so much like what he is, which is a replacement character for Vox Machina. Less so than he feels like a distinct character for Campaign 2. Now that was on the first rewatch, the first time watch through. I don't know if I'll feel the same way on a rewatch. That's just, I never really felt like he gelled as a character, and I think that Talison's character in Campaign 3 takes a lot of what he was trying to do with Mollymauk and refines it, and, if you'll pardon the pun, polishes it so that it actually feels like a more well-rounded, distinct character. I just had a hard time connecting with Mollymauk. But I don't dislike any of them. Like, not really. That's just generally where I feel about those characters. I also was like, I think I used to answer Vex, but I definitely don't feel that way about Vex anymore. That's just the benefit of a rewatch, though. So that's why I'm like, I may not feel the same way about Molly after a rewatch, because I used to not like Vex. And then I felt differently after rewatching the show. So I have a feeling that a watch through on Campaign 2 again will definitely change my opinion of that character. I don't know how. It might make it worse. It might make it better. It might change it laterally. Who knows? But that's generally how I feel. I should also point out that I'm a year behind on Campaign 3, so I don't know if I feel wildly different about the characters after watching that. But that's my answer right now. Spartan, you said you jumped into a pit that said Faith because you knew Indiana Jones. That's really funny. On the topic of the question above, what are your thoughts about the post-game player characters Kingsley and Liev Tell? I mean, my favorite one is probably Bertrand of the post-game characters. I do think that I thought Liev Tell was fine. I think what what Liam was going for Liev Tell was really cool thematically. I just think, unfortunately, like, you don't get a chance to see a lot from Liev Tell, which is fine. Liev Tell did exactly what she needed to do. I think Bertrand was my favorite because it's so clear from watching Bertrand that Travis is just channeling all the love he has for Kenneth Branagh's character in Harry Potter. Why am I blanking on it? Gilderoy Lockhart. For like that type of character. And I do think that Liam as Will in the wet in Dallin's closet. I don't remember it a lot, but I remember seeing a clip of him doing a little fist pump for like being able to hang out near Vox Machina. I thought that was cute, but I think Bertrand is by far and away my favorite. That being said, I think all of the Darrington quests, the Darrington Brigade adventures characters are so fun, and I would love to see any one of those characters come back. The Owlbear, and especially the Owlbear and Marisha's character, whose name I don't remember. Copperpot, maybe her character's name, I don't remember. I saw something a minute ago. There it is. Morning Dusk asked, "You've seen a lot of videos about how to play insert class, but do you have any good resources for how to DM for insert class?" Ooh, that's a good question. That is a good question. I don't know. Might be a topic for a future video. You know, there's a new edition of this game coming out. That might be a good video topic. Thank you, Morning Dusk. I might steal that. Might be talking about that later this year. We'll see. I'll have to do some searching. There may be some stuff out there that I've not seen, and I don't want to repeat it. I do also think that I will. I would be leaning a lot on the stuff in the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, which I've talked about before, which is more about player types. But there's a way to tie that into my core fantasy conversations around classes. So, video about this is the process. You're seeing it in real time. Someone will say something. I'll be like, "Ooh, that's a cool idea." Video about running for specific classes. Wow. The someone mentioned it earlier. The stream chat is showing up way later on the screen. Wow, that is definitely true. I wonder how late are we getting? Yeah, there's a real delay here. Oh, well, it's fine. Let's see. Where was I? Guy S, you said you subscribed last week. Here's a question. How do you grow in areas of GMing when your defaults and best options are always what you already do well? I think the answer would be to do it and suck for a while. I think you're exactly right, Guy, is to find a way to challenge yourself. I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm running a Pathfinder game and a Shadow Dark game. And for both of them, I'm kind of taking myself out of my comfort zone and saying, like, okay, I'm going to have to find a way to do this. So I just gotta make myself do it. Now for Pathfinder, I benefit tremendously from the fact that the other people in the group know the class better, know the game better than I do. And they're also being very good about understanding that things are still my call, but explaining how the game usually works. I got a really good group of players for that, which is not a guarantee when you're starting a new system that other people are already familiar with. I got very lucky there. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. You just say, I'm going to do this, and we're going to see how it goes. Let's see. Patashenka, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Druden Foots, no worries. You are fashionably late. That is totally fine. Hades Black, why is Travis Willingham the best D&D player in the world? That you agree, but you're just curious what I would say. I think there's a number of reasons. The number one is that he is really, really good at sharing screen time with other people, which is useful as well for like a home game, just being respectful of other people's time. And he is also very, very good about when he's frustrated, keeping a lid on it. There's other sort of superficial things. He's a great role player. He's really good at describing his combat. But those are two really, really high scores. Guy S said, another question. How do you onboard players from online looking for group channels when you're not running a popular system? Yeah. It depends. So like with Shadow Dark, I just gave them a copy of the book. Or no, I sent them a copy of the free rules. And I also made some videos about it, which helped, in my case, for people to understand sort of the basics. But it's hard. That's a good question because I run a lot of games for new players. I haven't run a lot of non-5e games for new players with Shadow Dark is an exception. I guess Pathfinder as well. But I feel like I'm also very new to Pathfinder. I'm new to both of them. But I've been a player in a lot of them, and I think I've always benefited from having other people at the table know the rules better than me. That's unfortunately, I don't know if I really have a strong answer. I know someone else answered in the comments, I think. Maybe that's not really what we were talking about. How do you onboard them? What is... Yeah, I guess someone's saying hooking people with the scenario, not the system. That is a really good piece of advice. I think that's really wise. That's a better answer than what I was coming up with. We already talked about Eve of Ruin. Yeah, Dios, I definitely know that feeling. You're just running a 2-year-long homebrew. I mean, I've been running a 4-year Strahd game. Part of that is just scheduling. I've talked about that on the channel before, very recently, in fact. I'm hoping the next Strahd game doesn't go that long, but because I've played through it in a year. But I'm very curious. I'm feeling the appeal of shorter campaigns. Let's put it that way. One more question for me. Do I really run modules as is or pick apart parts to use for the campaign? I don't really do either, Guy. I don't steal from... I've tried before. I think I've talked about this in the video it was about a year ago. So when I was talking about modules versus homebrew, I talked about how, in theory, you can steal from modules. I just don't, because what I'll do is I'm reading through a module, and I'll go, ooh, wait, this seems cool. Oh, this seems cool. Oh, this seems cool. Oh, I should just run this. Which is not particularly productive to stealing from it. However, I don't run them as is written. We talked about that actually a little bit earlier in the stream. Is I will say, I'll say I don't think this is going to be as fun as it's presented. I'm going to change it. I feel very welcome. Basically, someone has given me, and this is something I've gotten better at with time. So I think it works better as you run more pre-written modules. You get better at realizing, I don't think this is going to land. I don't think this is going to work. And you also have each session to prepare for what you think you're going to need to change. But yeah, I will change things freely. I made some major changes to Curse of Strahd, some of which for content and some of which just because I thought something might be fun. We'll see if that sticks next time. Unshelled Pity. Cult of Vecna versus Cult of Tiamat sounds like a lot of fun. I would definitely... That does sound awesome. Oh, Gamer Core. Interesting. I would not agree with that. I think Percy has always been an extremely anime character. If you're talking about the physical design, like a Kit Bus has a much more illustrative design than Phil Barassa. Everyone is more anime in the show. Yeah, I'm again, to each their own. I think those characters all work amazing on the cartoon. Druided Futz, no, you are not weird for that. There are plenty of people who don't like watching people or listening to people play D&D. I enjoy it. I enjoy it with some people and more so than others, but you're not weird for that. That's not a problem at all. Hello, Creeper Box. I'm sorry that you weren't able to stay, but I'm glad you got to pop in. Welcome, and I hope you had a good time. Oh, Guy, yes. I think I understand what your question is. Is just getting them to even sign up for a one-on-one session or a session 0. Just not getting any traction for non-5e stuff. It sounds like other people have already been responding to that. Yeah, that is really hard. It sounds like people are responding well to that. That's something that I think the whole hobby is struggling with right now. There's a lot of people who are trying to get other people to try TTRPGs that are not 5e. I mean, we've been ever since last January. And there's a lot of people who have not made good progress on that. I think I will say that there are always ways to hook people, but they're not going to be the same for every player. And that's the hard part, is that not every person in your group might be interested in the same games for the same reasons, which is, it's why D&D is so often the game people play, is because everyone can see themselves playing a version of D&D, even if there are some people who just don't like it. Not everyone. I'm not saying everyone who plays D&D doesn't, but I know a lot of people. See them in my comments all the time, and I've seen them online, and I definitely know this is true. Some people just run D&D because it's all they can get their players to play. That's a huge bummer, and I think that it sucks that your players aren't willing to try more interesting things. I think there is a point where you might say, listen, I want to run this game. If you all don't want to play with me, let's just play board games because I'm not interested in running D&D, you know? It's tough. Like, if you really don't like playing and running 5e, then is that the way that you want to spend your time with your friends? Should someone else run, you know? Or should you just say, listen, we are playing this. If you don't want to join us, no worries. We'll catch you in the next session. We're going to play for like 4 weeks. There's a lot more tough love required when you're trying to get people to play things besides 5e. So, depending on the group a lot. Ruben Crayford, do you suppose the Dark Sun setting from 5e will make it, or from 4e will make a reappearance in modern D&D, or do you suppose it will be sliced up and edited so much that it would warrant a brand new story/setting? I know the folks from Wizards have said that Dark Sun is like a potentially problematic setting. I think that William SRD, who's a YouTuber who makes videos, he used to do D&D videos, now he does videos about like video games based on role-playing games. So he does a lot of videos about D&D video games and Warhammer video games and things like that. He did a great video about how like really Dark Sun isn't problematic. I mean, it has problematic elements, but they're presented as bad, right? They are things that are basically like in the world, not a good thing that you are meant to try to solve or deal with. So he made a video about how like maybe the reason no one wants to touch Dark Sun right now is because it's a very anti-capitalist, it's a very revolution. Like, it is a game setting that inspires people to play revolutionaries, and that is maybe not what the folks at Wizards of the Coast want to put their weight behind. But also, I do know that there are elements of that game that probably didn't age super well, and Wizards of the Coast just doesn't want to put their foot in their mouth again. And like, given how they've handled other subject matter, I can't say that I'm especially mad at them for not treading into territory that they don't think they'd be able to handle well, but I'm not sure they'd be able to handle the stuff they are able to handle well. Or, like, there's stuff that they think they're able to handle well that they aren't handling well. And so if they're not confident in their ability to do Dark Sun, then I'd probably be like, yeah, if you don't feel sure about doing it, then don't do it. Then Wizards of the Coast should not be publishing it. But I do want to, at some point, like really dig into Dark Sun and see like, okay, it has its reputation for being problematic, but also it's meant to be sort of like Conan-esque, and that stuff can be problematic, so that is there. But also it is meant to be like a revolutionary story, so there should be ways to do this. I'd be curious to check out Dark Sun at some point. But you know, the lack of a officially published modern edition of it is a barrier to entry that I kind of like. It stops me from, like, it's one of the reasons I haven't talked about Greyhawk is because there's not a current Greyhawk book, and I want to recommend things that are actually available to people. But at some point, I'm probably going to end up talking about Dark Sun because I am very curious about it. So, yeah, Ruben, you bring up a good point. Dune is also a major influence on interest in something like Dark Sun. And I imagine tonally they are very different. But, you know, Dune is also, like, listen, I have not seen the new Dune movie, so please nobody spoil that series. But from what I know, based on, you know, what little I know, like, Dune is definitely about some problematic stuff, and, like, that can still work. You know what I mean? So, it's tough. Like, the whole first Dune movie is about, like, hey, like, isn't it kind of bad to do propaganda about a white savior? It's about a bunch of stuff. It's a very oversimplified approach to Dune, but you know what I'm saying, hopefully. Talik, no worries. Glad you were able to join us. Did I already respond to that one? Maybe I did. Talik, I'm very glad that you were able to be here. Steven, why do you think Wizards of the Coast is reluctant to add new classes to D&D 5e, where Paizo is very happy to do so for Pathfinder 2? I don't know. I mean, I know that there have definitely been... I think that there is a push for them to try to focus on subclasses that present new core fantasies rather than classes, because it's easier for them, I would assume, it's easier for them to playtest 5 or 6 different traits than it is to playtest an entire 20 levels worth of the traits. It's also easier to visualize how to integrate those mechanics those new mechanics you want to include into existing mechanics. So that's probably why for them they put their focus more on that. They think a lot about subclasses. But I know that they, for a while, were playtesting what was it called? The Mystic, and they just never got it off the ground. Which was, you know, I don't have any strong feelings about that, not having a huge interest in psionics. But definitely, they have struggled with new classes. I mean, I know that even the Artificer was like, when it was in playtest, was a rough, was not especially well balanced because it was not very strong, especially at higher levels. I don't know if that has been fixed or not. Do I have an advice? The Dapper Mog asks, do I have any advice on how to specifically run one-shots or mini campaigns? You're accustomed to doing long-form games and only managed to do one successful one-shot, and that was in World of Darkness. Prep really light, because your prep will always go longer than you expect. Players will always dawdle. You know what? Actually, jump into the action as early as possible, because anytime you do any sort of like, you meet in a tavern or you're brought together to meet here and here's your briefing or whatever, people always want to like play in the space a little bit. And there are other ways, like if you just start them at the door of the dungeon or whatever the equivalent is for your story, then it is so much easier to start getting to the good stuff. And then if they start sort of bomping around and doing whatever they want to do, then you have a lot more flexibility story-wise. You know, I've never been in a scenario where if you tell people like, oh, and you were hired by so-and-so, you know, they're still going to want to like retroactively haggle and roleplay, and then that leads to them role-playing in that scene, and that leads to, you know, 15, 20 minutes lost when you could have been doing actual adventure stuff. Yeah, Tyler, you bring up a good point. Wizards of the Coast is like 9 people on staff, so that's why they put more energy into adventures than they do into new classes, because I'm sure any new class they put in is going to break their game, you know. Now, I don't know the size of the Paizo team, but it seems like they have a different focus, which is not a huge issue for me. If that's a bigger concern for other folks, then, you know, that is totally valid. Oops. Oh, where did that comment go? It was there just a second ago. Nick Scene, very glad you were able to be here. Fantastic. GamerCore, have I used the spell points variant rule from the DMG? No, I have not. No, I don't really personally have an issue with spell slots. I haven't really had that be a frustrating thing at the table, so I've never really been tempted to try the spell points system. Unshelled Pity talking about Travis. Yeah, he is a very supportive cheerleader. That is a huge help as well. So he is very invested in other players knowing what they did was cool, which just makes him a lot of fun at the table. Reaper Lord, how do you not get outsmarted by your players in roleplay scenarios? My players come up with an exceptionally reasonable deals, and the moment you always end up agreeing. I've seen this comment before. You need more unreasonable characters. I mean, an example I think of is Thanos, right? Everyone in 2017 was like, oh my god, or 2018 was like, oh my gosh, Thanos is a character who makes sense. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He's insane. He wants to murder people. His whole solution is just, I want to kill people. How can I justify that to myself mentally? No, that's not what he believes. But he's not a reasonable person. People are telling, and now no one in the movie makes an argument that like, well, let's see. No one in the movie, I'm talking about Avengers Infinity War, makes the argument, hey, why don't you just make more resources? But points out that his plan would not actually work. But which I've seen people point to as a flaw, and I'm also like, I don't know that I want the movie to justify genocide, right? I don't know that I want his plan to be debunked and for him to say, oh, but actually this does make sense. Like, so narratively, it serves a useful purpose. But there's a moment in the movie that I love, which is where, you know, he basically says like the only way to solve this problem is to murder half of everyone. And Gamora says, you don't know that. And he does this. He like rolls his eyes and goes, I'm the only one who knows that. He's an unreasonable villain. And he just talks nice. He's very, very respectful. You know, he's very polite, but he's also a liar. Like, he says, I show people mercy. And, like, I don't kill anyone I don't have to. He's an absolute liar. He murdered all the dwarves except for one because he didn't want them to give away his secret. That wasn't balanced. He's a liar. People lie to themselves all the time. He thinks that he's noble, and he's not. He's a monster. So you just have to accept the fact that your character is going to be unreasonable. Their mentality has to make sense to them. But if someone exposes their hypocrisy, they're going to deny it, because unfortunately, that's what happens in the real world all the time. People are told, like, hey, what about this? And they're like, I don't want to do that. And you're like, but it makes more sense. And they're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like, there's a great moment in a Spider-Man comic where it's either a Spider-Man comic or an X-Men comic, but Spider-Man meets the X-Men villain Sauron. And Sauron, no relation to the Lord of the Rings character. Sauron is a guy who turned himself into a pterodactyl. He's like a sentient pterodactyl. And Spider-Man says, but with this sort of power, like, you have all of this scientific knowledge and you want to use it to turn people into dinosaurs? You're wasting this. You could absolutely use this to cure cancer. And Sauron answers, but I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs. We had a moment in our Strahd game where they met a moody young teenager who was testing his magic on the servants and was vaporizing them. And someone suggested, like, hey, why don't you, like, test this on, like, I don't know, animals before killing a human being? And the teenager said, well, I don't want to hurt an animal. And they were just like, what are you talking about? What is this little boy is insane. But, like, yeah, that was a moment that was really useful for the players to go, oh, I don't think we're going to be able to negotiate with this kid. He is not well. So, I mean, I think about this all the time because I've gotten this question before. I've seen people talk about this online before. I think people actually asked this question to Matt Colville before. Like, I've seen this question come up in the hobby a lot of times. Villains don't have to be reasonable just because they say they are. That's my answer. And also, sometimes you can have a reasonable villain. They should probably be the secondary antagonist, the henchman, or something like that. There could be someone who's able to be convinced. But they are not necessarily the one who calls the shots. They don't get to make the decision. Hopefully that helped. You will probably end up hearing me talk about that in another video as well, because I've thought about that question all the time. All the time. Let's see. Okay, people are answering that question. I'm way behind. You're a new player, you've played one session. Are different TTRPGs other than D&D that hard to get people into? It depends. Cameron, it depends on the community that you're in whatever form that takes. You can always find people to play any TTRPG with. It's a lot easier to find people who want to play 5e because it has been around for 10 years and it is so ubiquitous. And it's a good system. I like 5e. I know people are more frustrated with it than I am. And I absolutely feel bad for people who feel like they have to play it. I'm still having fun playing it, but if you're really frustrated by it, yeah, I can only imagine. How do you deal with seating? Oh wait, did I miss something? Yeah. Okay. How do you feel how do you deal with seeding doubt in the PCs about details without having to spoil the players? Like, this is what you think happened. And then a few sessions later going, no, it was like this, without the players trying to call you out. But last time you said, do you just say, go with it, it's part of the story? I think this is similar to what we talked about earlier, which is I have to prepare myself that, like, we had a major session in one of my recent games. I won't say which one, because I don't know if the players are watching, so I don't want to give them a hint. But there was a major scene where the entire time I was thinking, I've covered my ass pretty well on hiding the twist that I'm saving for later. But there is still a chance the players will figure it out. Or they won't do what I want them to do in this scene. They'll trust the wrong person or won't trust the right person. Whatever, there are definitely things the players can do in this moment. They'll turn left instead of right. They won't go knock on that door. They won't go and go on this, whatever it is, whatever the quest is. And they won't take the bait on my twist. And I have just reached the point where I have to live with that. It's tough. It's really tough to try to surprise players at all. So I try not to put that much energy into relishing, like holding on to a twist I want to do, when it is more useful just to say, I have a twist in mind, but my players might figure it out early, and so we'll figure out what happens if it happens. I don't know if that's useful. I don't know if I'm really talking about the same topic you're talking about, but that's what it sounds like we're talking about. If you meant something different, let me know. Let me know in another comment. Zephy, welcome. Glad to have you here. No problem at all. I don't know how long ago you wrote that comment. I am behind. I just skipped a bunch of them. There we go. Oh, this is why. There we go. Green Spoon just watched episode 52 of Vox Machina for the first time. Really weird not to have my video to accompany it. You will get that video on Thursday, but it sounds like you have reached the point where you are ahead of my videos, which is somewhat inevitable. Let's see, we already talked about that. Emma, glad you were able to be here. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Hades, you just want a warlock with a few more spell slots? Man, I would be so tempted just to tell my GM, hey, listen, can I narratively be a warlock but mechanically be a sorcerer? Because I don't like having no spell slots. I don't like having no spell slots, but I love the theming of the warlock, so I get where you're coming from. Oh, Tyler, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Keep the conversation moving in one direction. I'm glad to know that. Another thing, your combats are always going to run longer in a one shot than they would regularly. Oh, because they're not used to their characters. Yeah, that's a great point, Tyler. Oh, we jumped ahead. Oh, not by much. Okay. Yep, another answer to unreasonable villains. Have strictly motivated villains who care only about a small group of issues. Yep. Sauron does still live in a volcano. That's true, Unshelled. In Theros' game, your villain is convinced of their destiny and goals and will do anything to achieve it, but is willing to be more reasonable on less important matters to his eyes. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example, Gamercore. Oh my gosh, I'm actually caught up on chat, just about. Dudenfuzz, you opted out of 5e in the first year, just wasn't the right fit for you. Yeah, totally get it. Nothing wrong with that, despite what some people might have felt at the time. I mean, we're also, we're at the 10-year point. It's absolutely reasonable that people are reevaluating their relationship with 5e. That's just a natural part of the process. Dapper Mog, how do you feel about a player wanting to play something unreasonable but spin it in a way to make it interesting and still balanced? For example, I once played a White Dragon cursed to be a kobold. If someone wants to play something that seems unreasonable, I would tell them, like, listen, for balance reasons, are you willing to play like a level 1 version of that? And if they say yes, I would say something along the lines of like, we're just going to have to keep an eye on this. And that has to be a very open conversation about like, hey, I feel like this is too balanced. How do you feel about changing it so it looks like this instead? And sometimes what players will do is you'll find out, that was the thing they liked most about it, which is why it's so important to early on say, we're going to have to change this as time goes on. We're going to have to try to feel it out. And it's also helpful to say like, I found this online. People have talked about it and said it really works. It's for if you're playing a dragon, but you're a level 1 character. Because I guarantee you someone has made that resource before. You just have to have an open dialogue with that player and make sure they understand, like, listen, you might get attached to things, but you need, like, this is the thing that I really enjoy, or really, I should say, appreciate about watching Campaign 1 of Critical Role, is every time there's a change to the gunslinger, Taliesin just rolls with it. And he plays a lot of, like, homebrew stuff. Like, even in Campaign 3, he's playing a homebrew thing, and I think they probably have had similar conversations. I don't know, because I'm way behind. But, it's part of the process, and Taliesin knows what he's signing up for. He understands, like, okay, you might have to change things, and I'll have to roll with it. And that might mean losing something that I liked, and that's a bummer, but you know what? That's the trade-off for getting to play something that is so specific to what I want to do. So that would be my answer. Zeffy Wings. Super Geek Wife is good. Super Geek Tot, Super Geek Tyke, is really good as well. Is good and healthy. We had another ultrasound this morning, and he was just moving and a grooving in there, and rocking. And then they did the whatever, like the test with like the bands where they like check the fluids or whatever. And I think they just had it hooked up wrong because they were like, "Wow, he's really not kicking much." And my wife was like, "I saw my stomach move. He is kicking in there. Trust me." Dude and Fuzz, yeah, I totally get that. That's a bummer, but I get what you're saying about those systems not coming now, or not coming when you were really looking for them. How do I feel about hitting 40,000? It's amazing. It's fantastic. I feel so blessed. I always felt like I had some interesting things to talk about on the channel. I mean, you know, the whole reason I did the Critical Role series is because I felt like no one was doing that and talking about some of these things, and there were certain like observations that I felt like were staring us all in the face, and I was like, no, there's lessons here, and no one's talking about them. But it's so amazing to basically have this whole weird, huge audience here. Not that the audience is weird, that just like how quickly we got here is incredible. Guy S asks a good clarifying question that I had not thought to ask. Oh, Didn't Fuzz, that's cool. Being able to develop your own system, that's awesome. And people are talking about the different kinds of casters. Oh, Tyler, fantastic. Congratulations on your upcoming ultrasound. Ruben asks, strange question, will your Demystified series transition into Campaign 2, or are you taking a break/hiatus after completing Campaign 1? I think what I'll do is I'll finish Campaign 1, and then I will do the one-shots that conclude the stories of the characters of Campaign 1. You know, Search for Grog, Search for Bob, Dalen's Closet, and probably the Darrington Brigade at that point. And then I'll probably roll into Campaign 2. I don't know. I mean, I might take like a week or a month off, depending on the timing. But then, other than that, my goal is to go through these things pretty well chronologically. So, like, we'll get to, somebody just said, you know, it'd be great a Demystified series about EXU Calamity. I definitely will get to Calamity. And I'll probably get to it when we get to it in the series. You know, when they actually aired it. Or at the very least, like, I could see myself maybe doing it earlier, like right at the beginning of Campaign 3, but I wouldn't want to do it much earlier than that, because it plays on things that have been established. Like, the fun of Exandria Unlimited Calamity is you already know, you know, who Pervon is, you already know what Aor is, things like that. So, I wouldn't want to do it much earlier than that. Ashton's class was so cool originally. You loved the actual aggro mechanic. It got more busted later on. Well, I mean, I hate to tell you, GamerCore, but that's kind of true about most most classes in 5e. They tend to get pretty busted early. Well, that's not true. Some of them get a lot worse later on, but a lot of them get pretty amazing at higher levels. And also, I mean, that's not out of character. My understanding is that that's also true for the subclasses that are in the Wildmount guide, is that those also are pretty powerful. So it does seem like Matt's subclasses, even the ones that aren't playtested for his players, just tend to be on the more powerful side, which is certainly a style. Cameron asks, how would I feel as a DM if you asked if you could replace specific spells and cantrips with ones from other classes? For example, as a druid, asking to have Shocking Grasp as one of your starting cantrips. I wouldn't mind, personally, but I'm also not your GM. It's not ultimately my call. Like, I think it's not surprising to you to know that as a GM, I am much more permissive. So, for example, we were running, in my Strahd game, one of my characters is mechanically a warlock, but narratively they have pistols. And so they were basically like, hey, what can... They were like, I think, because doesn't... it was like Eldritch Blast normally... Or wasn't Eldritch Blast. Something does... Hex. Hex normally does necrotic damage, but the player was like, I don't know if that's going to be useful against all these undead. And I mean, do you just want to leave it as necrotic? I don't want it to be completely useless. And I was like, well, why don't we have it be fire? You know, you have pistols, and that's how you're going to be shooting your powers out. You know, let's just have it be fire damage. I think it makes more sense narratively. And it also is something that some monsters have some resistance to, but not as many as probably will have resistance to or immunity to necrotic in this specific undead heavy campaign. And so that was a nice compromise in our case. But not every GM feels the same way, and that is totally up to the GM's discretion, because different people have different opinions about very specific parts of this game. I just don't care that much about those individual spells, but that's my feeling. Somebody asked if I were running a level 20 one-shot, how would I want to do it? Thinking of having one, but it feels insane. I've actually been really tempted recently because... Oh, I'm not scrolled down for some reason? That's weird. I've been really tempted recently because I rewatched Matt Colville's video talking about running a level 20 one-shot. And he only got a chance to play it for like a couple of hours, but they had a lot of fun. And there we go. Now it's refreshed. And he was running something from the Arcane Library, which is the publishers of Shadowdark, but they've also... Kelsey's also written a lot of 5th edition adventures, and they have a level 20 adventure, which is called something, probably The Fires of Isk. And what he did is he replaced the monster inside with a different monster that made more sense. I would consider maybe swapping it out for Tiamat, maybe doing like something like that. But that's one that I've been thinking about reaching out to some friends and trying to schedule. I don't really have the time for it, but like I've had that brewing in the back of my head for like the last couple weeks. Hades Black, you said the Echo Knight is one of the best fighters. I want to play the Echo Knight at some point. I think I just get a little bored running only martial classes. Like I loathed playing the Rune Knight when I had runes. When I didn't have any runes left, I felt so bored, which is a bummer. Oh my gosh, I'm actually caught up. And I have to go to the bathroom. So I am going to be right back. I'm going to put on some hold music for y'all. I'm back. What is the name of the book for the 20th level campaign? Fires of Isk, ISKH, but it's on the arcanelibrary.com. Ooh, Tyler, that's a really cool way to narratively do that. The dog's name is Valentine, but I don't know how long Valentine's going to be around. Valentine is has been the victim of some other dogs digging into him for a long time. So, may not be my hold hold the line mascot for a while. I'm actually going to stand up. Battle scars, exactly. Morning dusk. You're listening to Good Boy FM. Y'all are really funny. Spartan asks, "Can you do wacky Star Trek episodes in D&D?" So it depends on how you want to do it. Oh, got my light source. Hold on. It's fine. I'm still pretty well lit. Just gonna turn this off. Yeah, it's fine. Can you do wacky Star Trek episodes in D&D? So there's a couple answers to that. One is absolutely yes, because you could use Spelljammer to literally have your characters cruising around in another reality. That's the whole premise of Spelljammer, is you're kind of just flying through space. It's much more Treasure Planet aesthetics, but you could absolutely do Star Trek. It's a great way to do Star Trek in D&D. The other answer is yes, you absolutely can. You'll just need some other format for it. But as an interesting example, when Matt Colville was running The Chain, really early on, one of his characters was already like looped in on what he was doing. Like they were collaborating on this. They just had one of his characters basically playing Gary something, I don't remember the character's name is, from an early episode of Star Trek, the original series, where he like gets godlike powers and has like silver eyes. I can't remember the name of the episode. They just did that in their game and left it to the players to figure out how to solve it. And he made a bunch of videos about that. Check out the campaign diaries for The Chain, like the first 5 episodes. Those are, a great way to see how you can take an episode of Star Trek and just do it in D&D. But that also involved kind of like Spelljammer adjacent stuff that it didn't have to. None of that was the reason they told that story. It just happened to also involve like a Mind Flayer ship and Githyanki and stuff like that. But that was all sort of secondary. My gosh, I'm actually still caught up on this chat. More wacky stuff using magic inside of sci-fi stuff. Yeah, some of that, I believe, if I understand what you're saying correctly, some of that is what Spelljammer is going for. Again, if I'm understanding what it is you're asking. Sign Monkey, welcome. Glad to have you here. Hades asks, what is my workflow when prepping a session? You're going to see a video about that on, oh my God, Monday? I got to get going on editing that video. But I also just did a live stream about that. Tyler asks, how's the next CR videos cooking? Next Demystified episode is almost done being edited. I need to change some of the images. I need to change a lot of the images because they just did not end up looking the way I was hoping. This is going to be a very interesting video because I'm talking about an episode that is almost entirely combat. So I went with a very different format for this one. But we have a lot of lessons from this one. In fact, I can actually tell you because I have it open. I have so many chapters. 19. There are going to be 20 lessons in this video. So, Dapper Mog, welcome. Or sorry, not welcome. Tyler, I meant next Monday. Dapper Mog, I meant to say no problem at all. And thank you so much. Squire, good to see you. Squire, you've been around since the OG days, way back in the day. Good to have you here. Summer, yep, Summer brings up a good point. Time loops are doable in D&D. It's tough, but it's definitely doable. Yeah, Zephy, some of these chapters, Zephy, are like 2 minutes long, but it's gonna be a beefy episode. But it is the most difficult part of the episode is almost done being edited. Today is next to Monday. Don't do that to me, Tyler. don't do that to me. We are going through daylight savings time. I'm already basically completely unmoored from time. Monkey, it's definitely quite the episode. It's quite the dramatic events that occur. I'm excited. What is your most wanted to play subclass as of now? Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question. Probably the Abjuration Wizard. Sorry, I couldn't come up with the name of that school of magic for a second there. Which critical cast member would you most want to DM? Probably Travis, because I think Travis is the one I get the most impression would be most in line with my game style. Like, I think Liam would enjoy some games that I ran, but not others. Same with Taliesin, same with Sam, same with a lot of them. Travis, I feel like would be a pretty good, or Matt. Actually, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to run for Matt. I don't have any expectations that will ever happen, but in a hypothetical world. To Squire, that is a good example, man. That is a fun season. I do sometimes go back and listen to those episodes specifically a lot, because man, those were fun ones to edit and put the music into. Thank you so much, Farty. I really appreciate that. That's so kind of you. Stevens asks, back in 3.5, you had a character you never got to play, which is going to be a rogue that I'm assuming prestidigitated into prestiged. Oh, I see. Prestiged into Shadow Dancer, so teleporting between shadows. How would you do that in 5e? I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I would say Shadow Monk is pretty close to that, but I don't actually know how you would do that, because you would. I mean, if you had Misty Step, you could do that. But I don't know how often you can Misty Step. So I don't know if you would have the same flexibility as what it is you're describing with the Shadow Dancer, because I don't know how the Shadow Dancer works. Oh, Russell, thank you so much. That's so kind. DW, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Oh, the Squire, it's okay. It happens. One of your carrot players is an Echo Knight Fighter Paladin with a dash of Sorcerer for shield. So as this AC gets really high, what do you think are the best ways to handle this in addition to save or suck spells? I mean, it's tough because we're kind of circling a question that I think about all the time, because I'm also a superhero nerd, which is when people say, like, well, how do you challenge someone like Superman? And the answer is you target the people who aren't Superman, and you make Superman care about that. I mean, watch Adventures with Superman. There are some times where Superman is really badly hurt. There's other times where his concerns are other people. Which is tough because that's not really how D&D is formatted. It is very much like, hey, you want to challenge everyone physically, but if you can put them into scenarios where like emotionality matters, which I don't know if that's a possibility for your player. I certainly hope it is, but you never know. But that would kind of be my instinct, is less focusing on one-on-one targeting them and more like, okay, do you have a loved one? What can I do with that character? How can I put them in danger? Not immediately kill them, because that sends the wrong message, right? It just punishes them for having loved ones, which is not ideal. But instead making it, really testing their connection to their friends and their family and things like that. Yeah, exactly, Guy. Yes. How do you challenge Superman? You give him problems that he can't solve with his character sheet. Which would you choose as a feat, Elemental Adept or Shadow Touched? I don't have strong feelings about most feats, so I'm kind of the wrong person to ask. That being said, I actually I should answer that question because I should look them up because I have a video coming out about feats that I need to start doing some prep for. Cameron, you said different types of homebrews on YouTube that are based on different media, like One Piece and Mass Effect. Interested in those types of homebrewed games? I mean, it depends. I'd be interested in one that was definitely about something that I cared about. I played the Dragon Age RPG and I loved the system, which is why I'm so excited about trying out Fantasy Age, which I have not had a chance to play yet. We were going to, but just didn't that game didn't end up happening. But the sort of problem I had was that I hadn't played Dragon Age, and so when we were playing that campaign, a lot of things I just didn't care about. It just to me felt like a version of D&D, but with fewer interesting monsters, because all the monsters were of a shared theme or origin or something like that. Now that being said, it depends on what it is. I mean, I've played in 5e games where all the monsters are inspired by pop culture, and that's not really to my taste. But for folks who enjoy that, I think there's some great stuff out there. It's just not really my thing, you know. DW asks, what non-RPG stuff are you binging? Books, TV series, film that you're absolutely digging right now? I just watched the first season of Has Been Hotel on Amazon Prime, and it's great. It's a really, really fantastic musical comedy that I think the thing I like about it is it is a crass animated musical comedy, but what I really like is that it's not like a South Park or a Family Guy even, where it's like crude for the sake of being crude. It takes place in hell, so there are some unsettling and unsightly things in it, and it's sort of just upfront about that. But it's funny, but it doesn't quite fall into some of the same traps you see with that kind of humor. Like, it doesn't feel like a Cartoon Network, like Adult Swim kind of show. It doesn't feel like a Rick and Morty even, or especially not like a Robot Chicken. It also, the fact that it's a musical is not a joke. It is just a really, really good musical. So I recommend Has Been Hotel on Amazon Prime. I'm also in the process of rewatching Stranger Things, because I heard great things about Stranger Things season 4, but I hadn't watched Stranger Things season 3, because like the way the Netflix model works is if you're not online the weekend that a show comes out, you don't hear anything about it again after that. But people really like Stranger Things season 4, so I'm like, oh, okay, I should really go back. So I'm actually rewatching season 1. I'm just about to finish that, go back into season 2. AKL, no, you're only like the second person to ask about Daggerheart. I do want to do some Daggerheart content. Don't know if I'll get a chance right away, but I'd like to at some point. Mr. Taiwanese, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate that. I still do. I mean, I do character building videos as well, but definitely I think that is a great way to describe it and a very lovely way to describe what I'm going for, which I like. Thank you. Have I seen the One Piece live action on Netflix? No, I have not. I am way behind on TV. There's a lot of shows that I'm more interested in. I mean, I'll check out One Piece at some point. It is on the list. There's other things that I want to watch first that are much higher priority that I've been putting off for like more than a year. DW, yeah, Has Been Hotel is animated. What feats were people asking about earlier? I don't remember. Oh, Elemental Adept or Shadow Touched. I can't type. Or Shadow Touched. I mean, I'm going to make a video soon about starting a character with a feat and about whether or not you should ban feats. Yeah, it depends on the character. You know, for my thing, I think I would be very much in the category of, I think Shadow Touch would be more interesting for me personally, because I think Elemental Adept falls more into the camp of, oh, I picked the wrong type of damage, and I would feel that way all the time. I feel that way about spells too, but I think it would no pun intended, it would burn a little bit more if I had picked a feat for it instead of spells. Also, I lied. The pun was intended. Mike, would I consider doing more non-D&D character building videos? Yeah, I have some ideas for ones for Pathfinder as well that I have not gotten a chance to do yet. But yeah, Tyler, that's true. I do not care about like damage per round or any of that kind of stuff. Have I considered doing more content with fans, such as one-shots or discussion in a podcast formats? I think about things all the time. That's the best way. That's the best way to put it. I don't have any plans for any of that. I think about things. I just don't have any plans for any of that stuff right now. Maybe at some point. I'll probably be online for about another 15 minutes to a half hour, is what I'm thinking. Because I'm starting to feel my voice go a little bit. So I don't want to go for too much longer. Puns always intended. Listen, the puns in my videos are often actually genuinely not intended. They're written in, but they are usually stumbled upon kind of on accident as you see them happen. But I'll admit to it when they were planned. What is my preferred VTT? You're getting into Foundry and impressed with how robust it is. Yeah, I think I mean I prefer Foundry over Roll20 because so much of what I want to do with Roll20 is gated behind monthly payments, whereas you can do it with Foundry. You do have to pay for a license for Foundry, but then I think it's just yours, which is nice. So I'm enjoying Foundry. The problem right now I'm experiencing is that right now, which is I think a really good thing, Wizards of the Coast and Foundry are starting to work together, and because of that, all the add-ons that make you be able to play 5e through Foundry are not all of them are working right. So I need to do some troubleshooting and figure out why we can't open our character sheets anymore. But it's ultimately going to be a good thing, right? The ultimate goal is you want to be able to play 5e in more places, and I was shocked that they're only just now making that deal after 10 years. But I think they're, the problem is that they're, they know that the people who are invested in Foundry are not going to leave that platform. So it just makes more sense for them to work with Foundry than to not. So I am liking what I'm seeing at Foundry so far. But those are the only two that I know, really. So it would be very tough for me to say these are the two best virtual tabletops. I just personally prefer Foundry to Roll20 for what I try to do. But I've only been using Foundry for like a couple months. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the long term. Rewatched my video about Mission Impossible. What's another video that you love it so much that it inspired you to run it as a campaign or narrative arc? I do that all the time. I've done, let's see, I've stolen things from Pirates of the Caribbean movies or things like that. I did a whole campaign where every new adventure was heavily lifted from a, it's like a bug in here. It's a fly. Every adventure was heavily inspired by Disney movies. And there was a big narrative theme throughout all of those. That was like the second campaign I ran, actually, which I should do. I'll do a whole video about it at some point. I just haven't made that one yet. I'm sure there are other examples of ones that I've stolen from other movies, but yeah, it's something I do all the time and unapologetically. Would I consider doing a video promoting known and lesser known real play TTRPG podcasts and or YouTube channels? Yeah, I mean, I try to pepper in references to the ones I know about when I can, especially with YouTube channels, because those are very much in line with what I do. Haven't focused as much on actual plays lately, but I definitely would at some point. Yeah, sometimes I'm seeing these out of order, which is strange. You started streaming. Any other newer ideas, planning or trying, or formats for videos or different subject matter to tackle? Not right away. There's definitely other things I want to talk about down the road, but right now, just adding streaming is more than enough change at the moment. Would I consider reviewing more third-party content like Grim Hollow? Absolutely. I definitely want to review Grim Hollow at some point in the future. Have not had a chance to do so yet. Hello. Hold on one second. I'm on stream.
Oh.
Yeah.
How much longer?
Probably like another 15 minutes.
Oh.
Half hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yo, you.
Bye.
Bye. Cameron, don't know much of anything about Pathfinder, much less D&D, to be honest. What would I consider something better and worse about Pathfinder compared to D&D 5e? Pathfinder is a lot crunchier than D&D, which is definitely to say there's a lot more, like, more resource management, and it's more detail-oriented. That can be worse, but it also gives more specific bonuses. Things that are better, there's some definitely like quality of life improvements. I'm gonna make a video about this pretty soon, actually, probably in the next month or two. I don't remember. I'm not looking at my schedule right now, but I do want to do a video about like the kind of basic rule things that I like more about Pathfinder than I do in D&D. Which is not to necessarily pit them against each other, just comparing, just interesting things. Yeah, Monkey. Yeah, Foundry's a little bit broken right now. Do I have any experience with solo TTRPGs? Oh yeah, someone asked that earlier, and then I lost the question. Or watching any of the various channels that are solo actual play series. No, I only kind of recently learned about these. I know about one channel, which I don't remember what it's called. There are some solo RPGs that I want to try. Not many, because there's a lot of them that I'm like, that's not the experience I'm going for with that genre, but there's a couple where I'm like, that game sounds cool. So yeah. Mr. Taiwanese, I self-host my Foundry. Yeah. As if you know, not everybody needs a Foundry account. It's just you make one, and then you create little accounts for, you create logins for every player. I don't make passwords for them. You create a username that they can sign in for. Okay, One Piece live action is a good meet in a tavern video or video example. Listen, if I can find an excuse to watch One Piece and turn it into content, make my Netflix a tax write-off for that month, I might check it out a little sooner. Zeffy, that's fantastic. Congrats on the new cat. He has the whole name except for the fourth. That's appropriate. Bertowski, no, I have not gotten tired of your comments. I got it. I killed the fly. I got it. No, I've not gotten tired of those comments. Yeah, Zeffy, I couldn't find the mute button, so that's why I was just like trying to be vague. What is my favorite monster to throw at your players? Man, I'm gonna have to do a video about this because I like hags, and it's tough to get them right because you want to be able to have them be able to make deals with the characters. That's kind of the fun for them. I don't know. I really like hags. I like undead a lot too, kind of in any shade of undead. Those are my two go-tos. Thank you so much, Hans Petter. Thank you so much. Hi, Mike. This is from the Viking, which is a great username, by the way. I've been seeing it and I have not commented on it yet. What do you do when players want to dig in on using real-world science, in particular physics, in your games, and it isn't in the rules? Yeah, that's tough. I usually just say, okay, give me a... If they can talk through... If they say, I think I would know how to make this work, I might say, okay, give me an intelligence check to see if you can make it happen here. Or I'll say, give me an intelligence check to perform the deed. And then if they say, like, I know how to make it work, I'll be like, okay, but you have to make a roll to see, can you do it successfully? Like, there's a risk of failure with anything here. And then I'll try to find some way to explain it. And which is just lifted from how Matt runs for Percy, right? Where they'll be like, when in episode 27, which is a tough episode to rewatch, but if you do watch it, you will see as Taliesin is like trying to explain, I'm trying to build an Archimedes death ray, there are moments when Matt says like, okay, well, you have to make a roll. And I think the DC that Matt has set is still kind of Pathfinder numbers, but on the other hand, he's trying to make a laser, which would be perfect for killing vampires. So like, I kind of get why he has to make it such a high DC, but for him to basically, he has to keep saying things like, okay, you got to this point and it breaks and you need more materials. And that's kind of all you need to do, right? You don't really need to understand the science, and your players also kind of don't need to understand the science. If you can just boil it down to the core mechanic, which is if you're trying to achieve a thing, it's going to give you some sort of major advantage. There has to be a risk of failure, and you have to roll the dice for it. Now, there's different levels of that. I mean, I'm thinking of an example in Exandria Unlimited, where the players are all like, hey, if we roll an alligator on its back, it'll make it fall asleep. And Abria could have done two things in that moment. She could have either said, okay, well, this is not an actual alligator. It is literally made of plants. It doesn't function that way. But what she did say was she said, okay, well, it's going to try to fight you and try to stay off, try to make sure you can't keep it on its back. You have to try to hold it down so there's a chance of failure, which I think is the smarter way to go, right? If you don't know anything about the science, but like someone can Google it and say like, no, this is a real thing. Or even if it's just compelling enough, you can say, okay, well, that doesn't mean you get to just do it because you know how it works. So there should be a risk of failure still, is my answer. In which case, it's just like doing any other skill check where you as if someone like targeted someone's eye, right? It's like, do I want to give them the power to do this? If I do, how difficult should it be? If they fail, what is the consequence? Which just kind of helps boil it down to just like any other mechanic. So that's my approach. 3 saving throws versus 6 saving throws. Yeah, I get that, Farty. That definitely is a major change. Me, Myself, and Die is the biggest solo channel. I don't remember if that's the one that I have flagged to check out. Hold on. That does sound familiar. Yes, that's the one that I had bookmarked. Science Fantasy Awesome. I have not heard of them. Or I guess, well. Okay, yeah, found it. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. Playlists. I have been wanting to play 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. I don't know if that's the next one I'll do necessarily. Cool. I'll flag that one for future checkout. Hades says, I have one question you owe me. What has been or was the most difficult lesson to learn as a GM? Oh, that's right. You asked that the other day. All right, now it's time to wrap up. It was a great live stream. No, I'm kidding. What has been the most difficult lesson to learn as a GM? The earliest lesson I learned was it has to be the player's game. The most difficult, I think, has been how to adjust my game for each group, including adjusting the tone of the game for each group. Because I used to really be like a lot of GMs. I used to be like, okay, this is how I run games. And that's the style. This is my style. I couldn't really put into words, which is kind of the first warning sign, right? Is like, you think of, which is not terribly strange. I think it makes sense that like we all run D&D the way that we think makes the most sense. So we think that is the way that we run D&D. How do you describe that as a style? But it became really useful to start thinking about the different... Yeah, I'm definitely going to need to stop after this question probably pretty soon because I'm starting to hear my voice go. But definitely to be like, if I can establish a clear style, if I can actually define the style that I'm going into a game with, I can set expectations for my players, and I can start understanding what my players are looking for from the game. So basically being able to say, what are my players looking for? Hades, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. I was already going to wrap up pretty soon. I think I'm going to just wrap up a couple minutes earlier than I expected, but definitely where I'm leaning towards, which is wrapping up pretty soon. I'm supposed to do maybe a Baldur's Gate stream tomorrow. I'm not sure if that's still going to happen. We'll see how my voice feels. But basically, if you can understand how you GM and why you make the choices you do, and this is something I'm going to make a whole other video about, but this is a lesson that took me a while to learn because it was really difficult for me to establish what I was looking for from my players because I wasn't telling them what to expect from me. And if you can do that, if you can make sure that your players know what this game is going to look like. I mean, that's the benefit of a session 0, right? Is you can help establish tone, you can help establish things about the world, you can help establish whatever you need to make sure people are on the same page before the game starts. That took a while for me to realize how much I should actually be listening to what people are looking for or recruiting people for specific adventures rather than just saying, hey, I think we should run this and this would be fun. Like, what do they actually want to play? And giving them options is really helpful for that. And also giving them options that I'm actually excited about. Not just throwing out ideas, like rounding it out, like, okay, here's 2 ideas I like. And I'll throw in a 3rd one just because I should have the 3rd one. Like, if you're not actually excited about it, don't give it to them. But also, yeah, being able to really listen to what people are looking for from the game and responding to it. And that's actually been helpful too. I might start doing this in other campaigns, but at least for Shadow Dark, I started doing Stars and Wishes, which is asking people what they're enjoying about the campaign and what they're looking for from the campaign. I think the reason I started doing that with that one only is because that's the only one I'm running right now that's actually homebrew. So there's a lot more room for me to like adjust it, like totally go in different directions. If I'm going down a homebrew, I mean, it's a combination of pre-written stuff from Shadow Dark mixed with things that I'm creating, and I have to stitch it all together anyway. But because I have full control over where that goes, I'm asking people what they want and what they're enjoying because it's really useful for me to know that. I might start doing that again with other groups as well, and like formalizing the way I do that because it's kind of essential to make sure that you know what your players like. And this is something that also, I think I knew this before I started running the channel, and I realized how different I am from so many GMs now that I feel this way as I started seeing the comments when I talk about this kind of thing. You know, when I'd say something like, oh, you know, I think it's your responsibility to your players. And no matter what it is I say after that, so many people who are GMs, or at least think of themselves as GMs, or are passionate about this game, respond, well, that's not how I think about GMing. And I'm like, yes, it is. Like, actually, yes, it is. You run the game that you think your players will like. You may not think of it that way, but that's what you're doing. And if you can actually start thinking about that and actually like making that part of your priority, like being honest with yourself that yes, you actually do run the games that you think your players will enjoy. Because if you don't, I don't know what you're doing. Like, what do you mean? Your responsibility is to your players. Like, that doesn't mean that you cater to them, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that you give them everything they want, because that's not what they are looking for. They want to be challenged. But it does mean that you actually have to, like, you know, care about them. And I think so many GMs just don't think about it that way. And I think it's because the default in this system, in this hobby, I should say, is to put the GM on a pedestal. And my goal is to bring them up to my level, bring the players up to be on the same level as GM of like whose interests matter. That took me a while to learn. So hopefully that answer was worth the wait. Something Wellsian, glad you came in. Thank you so much. Happy to have you here. All right, folks, that is going to do it for me. I think that was a great question to end on. So I am really glad that we got to hang out. Thank you so much for bringing me to 40,000 subscribers whenever it was that happened. I think maybe December? January for sure. Thank you for bringing me to 42,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for enjoying the channel. I'll give you a little sneak preview of what we got coming up next. That's how I'll wrap this up. Is I'll just tease what we have coming on the channel, which is on Thursday. We have a Critical Role Demystified episode about episode 52, the Kill Box. On Monday, we have a video about how to prep for my D&D sessions on which is going to be adapted from a live stream that we did like a week ago. On next Thursday, I'll be doing a bonus Critical Role Demystified, which was sponsored by one of my patrons, which is not a in-canon one-shot. You know, patrons at higher levels can ask me to make demystifieds about other one-shots. This one is going to be about the first one that Liam O'Brien ran, which is a lot of fun. One of my favorites on the Critical Role channel. Really enjoyed writing that script. So that's going to be a fun one. Then on the Monday, the 25th, we have a video about multi-classing, making your character starting with your multi-classing, which we is also adapted from a live stream we did last week. And then at the end of the month, we have the episode 53 Critical Role Demystified. And then in let's see, just broad strokes in April, we got a Baldur's Gate video, we got another Shadow Dark video, kind of, you'll see. We have a video about whether players can ever break your game. Spoiler alert. Can they though? Really? Yes and no. We'll see. We have I think I'm going to try to talk about a book that I've had for a long time and make a couple videos about that. I don't want to say any more than that because I'm hoping that happens in April. And we're going to do a video about whether or not it matters whether the cast of Critical Role knows the rules of D&D, because I see that comment a lot and I have a lot to say. Turns out, as the script was written, I was like, oh, I had a lot of thoughts about this. Thank you so much for hanging out. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And you know what they say. Play fair. And have fun.